Welcome Merak enthusiasts to the Merak group video. We're going to be looking at rebuilding the Weber DCNF carburetors. For the sake of illustration, we just have these carburetors sitting on an intake manifold. When you get ready to work on these carburetors, the easiest way to deal with them is to take out the whole intake manifold. It is held in by a bolt on the back end and a bolt on the front end. Before we get started, let's take a look underneath the bonnet to get an idea of what the bigger picture is all about. You will need to remove this air horn first, secured by 4 nuts. What I like to do is put a towel on each side of the engine just in case I drop something. It's real easy to retrieve. This is the fuel rail right here, and you have 3 leads: the rear carburetor, middle carburetor, and the front carburetor. You just need to secure or unsecure the hose clamps. Once the fuel rail is pulled back, you will need to detach the throttle cable from the throttle rod right here. It is a ball and socket connection, and this will pop right off. And here you have some adjustments that can be made so that this line is not overly slack, and so you have a much better throttle response. You have to disconnect this hose, loosen the clamp, and then this slides off. This hose will slide off, no problem. The intake manifold has 2 vacuum ports. One is located at the front left part of the unit, and the other one is located in the rear right side of the unit. Both of those lines will need to be disconnected. The very last thing is that you have the bolt that is located here in the front, and then this bolt right here that also needs to be disconnected, and the whole unit lifts right out. Once the intake manifold is removed, you will note that each intake of the cylinder head has a recessed groove in which a O-ring resides. These O-rings are very, very important because they help maintain the correct vacuum to the carburetors, and then that in turn allows the car to run properly. When these start to fail, things go really awry. Just have to say, personal experience. On our website, we have the correct size O-rings for the SS engine as well as the non-SS engine, and these are Viton O-rings, and they have a lifespan, according to McMaster Car, of about 7 years. So I think every 10 years might be a good idea to check what kind of shape these O-rings are. And if they are compressed into a square, you could be assured that, and they started out round and they're compressed in a square, you know that they are compromised, and it's time to change those guys out. And I also will note, don't take that bolt out. That's one of the mounting bolts. Because if you put the carburetor on and you forgot to put this mounting bolt on, you're gonna have to pull that carburetor off. The carburetor stops that from coming out, so leave that alone. Okay, got the 4 nuts off. Let's lift this thing up. And now we can really see what's going on. Let's take this off. And again, when we put all this together, we'll make sure we use all new washers and new gaskets. Just as a side note, just wanted to show how nicely these carburetors clean up. I know some folks like to just go in and make quick work of it with sandblasting, but if you take your time with the carburetor, and this particular product is Mother's Mag and aluminum polish, it will clean this carburetor up to a beautiful luster. And of course, once you put the air cleaner cover on, the carburetors just get buried in the engine and you don't really see it. But for those of us who are a little bit maybe more obsessive than we should be, this is the only way to go. So when you first start working on these carburetors, it's a really good idea to take a lot of photographs, make a lot of notes, and start by just taking one part or one piece apart and then putting it back on. You'll note that we have a little opening here, right there. Let's get a closer look at that. Right there. And your air horns, or trumpets as they're called, you want to make sure that you're matching it up with the smaller opening. So that's how it goes. And all these tolerances are really tight. So if you're putting it back together again and you go, oh man, it doesn't want to fit. Well, that's just the way they're made. You have to be very careful. You don't need to take a hammer or anything like that to knock it down. You just have to wiggle it back and forth, and eventually it will get seated. So just be aware of that. Don't ever force anything on these carburetors. Alright, these are the auxiliary venturis, and then the venturis sit deeper in there. We're going to take all this apart, but just to show you, this is a 36 choke, or venturi as they're called, and it sits down deep inside this chamber. I like to use a gunsmith set. This has a nice flat surface parallel on the sides, so you don't distort the bolts when you're taking it out. All right, undo that one and this one. I wanted to bring this to everybody's attention. There should be a rubber gasket that fits on the underside of the air horns, and this is what came originally. It's a little bit brittle, so it needs to be replaced with a new one. but you're not going to get those with the rebuild kit, and they have to be ordered separately. And on this particular one, there's a little cutout slot here, and that slot is meant to accommodate the space difference right here in the middle where you've got the joining aluminum part. And so when you fit that gasket over and slide it on up, that slot in the gasket is going to match this little metal joining piece. Also, as we're looking at this, you can see there's a seam there. If you really want to have good airflow, it's always good to file this seam out and then go over it with a Dremel tool to make it super smooth. So we undid these two mini bolts here. That opens that up. That all needs to get cleaned out. And then here, this mesh can be pulled out. This is the top cover of the carburetor, and we have a couple of things that we need to replace. Number one is going to be the filter. It's located right here. We take this out, and this is where the filter lives. So that's an easy enough thing to do. The second thing is the needle and seat. And in order to do that, there is a fulcrum right here that allows the float to rise up and down within the fuel bowl. The fulcrum needs to be pushed from the outside in, and we're going to go ahead and do that right now. That's pretty easy. And there you have it. So now we will remove the needle and seat. And when we put that back together again, it's important. There's like a ball bearing here, and it's spring loaded. You never want to have this depressed when you set up the float, and we'll go over that in a little more detail in just a few. So we're going to remove that and replace it with a new needle and seat, and we'll see how that goes. The float is out. This is the tab that touches the needle and seat. This is the needle, and this is the seat. When we put the new one in, this tab will be touching the needle, and the needle has just a retractable or a spring-loaded little ball bearing here, like a BB. You do not, again, you do not want that BB depressed. You want the tab of the float to just be touching the tip of it without depressing. So that's an important note when you're putting things back together again. Have the filter there, and then the new gasket and lock that bad boy in there. And we'll tighten everything up as the last step. So next goes the seat with the needle, and just do it in an upright or upside down position. That way the needle's not going to fall out of the seat. Is that pretty snug? Okay, good.
Sweet.
All right, time to get the float and the fulcrum installed. Absolutely ready. All good. So now we need to measure the float range. That's always a fun thing. So we'll do that next. You'll trust me, that's okay. All right, here we go. Now, when you get to the point of measuring things, you want to measure it with the top cover in a vertical position. And if you take a real close look at the needle, you'll note that it is not depressed. This is depressed. This is not depressed. So you don't want any weight on that's why we're holding it in a vertical position, so there's no force being put on the needle. And now what we're going to do is, this has got a ridge, and that ridge measures out at 3 millimeters. The range for the float being in the upmost position, which it is right now, is 50. So if you measure from the outside of this ridge to the very bottom of the float without depressing the needle, you should end up with 53. The book calls for 50, but they want you to measure from the underside of the carburetor top cover, which makes it a little bit more difficult. So if you incorporate this ridge, it makes life a lot easier in the real world. This metal tab that's part and parcel of the float is what you would bend to make your adjustments either on the high end or on the low end. And now when we look at the measurement, again, you would measure from here to the bottom.
The way you videotaped it is way better. Otherwise, you're jabbing your hand with the front of your calipers.
Yeah. If you don't have calipers, this will work. So I should make a point of letting everybody know that the 42 DCNF requires 48 millimeters from here to here. With the 44 DCNF, 50 millimeters is what's required. This is set at 50, and when I place it here, that's pretty close. So that's another way of doing it that's available, and you don't need the vernier calipers. This is an interesting part of the carburetor. We have the emulsion tubes here, 1, 2, and then we have the pump jet, which is these two nozzles, and they are controlled by what is commonly called a check valve. Weber Carburetors calls them delivery valves, and other folks call them pump valves. And for the purpose of this video, the pump valve feeds the pump jets, and that's how we'll refer to it. So we'll take out one of the tubes here. What we have here is the air corrector on this end and the main jet on this end. And when you take these out, they're really hard to separate. And you might think, no, there's no way to separate them. But if you soak them in penetrating oil, or you soak them in carburetor cleaner, they will eventually let go. So there we go. There is the main jet, the air corrector on this end. That's what that looks like. And so here we have all three pieces. I'd like to talk about the pump valve, or as Weber calls them, the delivery valve. If the pump valve isn't in good order, the carburetor will never do what it needs to do in a proper way. So the pump valve feeds the pump jet, and this is the pump jet. Just going to get a little bit of a close-up here. So fuel is fed through the pump valve, and then these nozzles, one on the right and one on the left, will shoot fuel into the chamber. And the pump jet is sandwiched in between two washers, and the pump valve fits through the whole assembly. So let's get a better look at it. We have a washer here at the top of the pump jet, and then there is also a secondary washer on the bottom, or the underside. Let's take a closer look at this pump valve. Normally, what Weber did was they fitted the top in order to get this check ball inside here. They plugged it with a, you guessed it, a lead plug. And in my particular situation, the lead plug had a microscopic crack, and when I started the engine, the whole top of the engine just literally within a matter of seconds flooded out, and I was in a position where I could turn the car off, turn the engine off, and drain the combustion chambers because they were all filled with fuel. Anyway, if I was driving on a highway, freeway, or maybe even on a regular street, and that was to happen, you'd be looking at a lot of bent valves and just essentially a catastrophic engine failure. So I suggest very strongly to anybody that's going to rebuild their carburetors to always replace them with a new pump valve and one that specifically has a pressed in machined aluminum plug into the body of the pump valve. These specific ones are listed on our website under parts and products in the engine section off of the main page. The website is maragroup.com. We also have manuals and exploded views of the carburetor. That's always something good that you can download and print out, and you can have that as a very handy reference when you're rebuilding your carburetors. And Pierce Manifolds is the company that has these pump valves that have the pressed-in aluminum plug. So again, I highly, highly recommend this particular product. This particular idle jet is a 0.65, and again, depending on how many turns in or out your air fuel mixture screw is going to determine whether you need a smaller or larger idle jet. So that's how it fits together like that. Alright, time to loosen the throttle shaft end nuts. There we go. So next these guys come off. You'll note the phenomenal dexterity. And we'll have this disassembled shortly. Alright, we have removed everything off of the throttle shaft, and the only thing that's left now is to remove this cover and the wave washer fit over that. So now we're going to get something like a razor and try to get between the body of the carburetor and this metal cover. And what is the metal cover? It covers the bearing that we're going to replace with a sealed bearing. We tried to back out the screws that hold the throttle plates in position, and we looked to see if the threading was staked or not, and it looked like they had just staked the top of the screw, but the threading of the screw looked to be intact. But as we tried to back it out, well, they were not being cooperative. So the plan now is to grind out the threaded part of the screw, all four, and then at that point all four of these screws should come out. So we can take the throttle plate out and replace the bearings. Well, there we have it. We just ground out the end of this screw, It came out beautifully. It was very easy, and we can actually reuse this screw with a little bit of Loctite. You know, the kind that's impervious to gasoline. It's Loctite 243. Right there. This is the good stuff. Medium strength. And the nice thing is that once this screw goes back in, once we've replaced the sealed bearings, these screws will have a much lower profile than the existing screws at once it's at full throttle. So all of that sounds pretty good. To get this throttle shaft and bearing apart, have to really use a mallet and hammer it till one of the bearings sits proud of the carburetor body, and a lot of WD-40 or some sort of a penetrant to really loosen these things and get them out. We are going to replace this open bearing with a new sealed bearing. That's what it looks like. We're going to go ahead and take the auxiliary venturi out, and just want to show you folks, there's a stake mark here and a stake mark there, and the same thing applies on the other side. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this, to protect this, we're going to put it between two pieces of wood, and then we will apply pressure against this part of the venturi and this part of the auxiliary venturi, and just ease it on out. Necessary.
Okay. Okay, you got to be sure it's like that and not. And the reason I say that is, yeah, you want that thing to clear the blocks.
Right. We have the carburetor body set between two pieces of wood, and we're going to use this from the underside. Just give it a little tap. And you can see how easily this starts to slide on out. And there we go. 1, 2, 3. So the venturi is sliding around, and the reason why it doesn't want to come out is because where the auxiliary venturi went in, these 2 points end up getting staked. In other words, the metal here is ever so slightly bent in order to keep this auxiliary venturi fixed inside the carburetor. So we're going to just file these edges right here a little bit, here. I can run my finger over it and I can feel that that's where the venturi is getting caught, right there and right there. So we'll file it down and see how that works. This is the ultrasonic cleaner that we're going to use. And here is the ultrasonic fluid that we're going to use. The ultrasonic cleaning solution that we're going to use is the AquaVantage 815MX, and it is recommended by all the major aircraft corporations and automotive corporations, so it should clean the carburetors beautifully. There's the ultrasonic cleaner all mixed up properly, and it's ready to go into the ultrasonic cleaner unit. Alright, carburetor body is in the ultrasonic cleaner, and we're adding the ultrasonic fluid solution. We're talking major excitement here. Alright, we're going to let that bad boy sit in there for a while and get all happy and clean. There we have it. That carburetor is in a really good place, and when it comes out, it'll look better than it did 20 years ago. Ooh. Let's get a close-up. Whoa, that's one happy looking carburetor. Looking good. Alright, now what? We're going to just put it in the bucket and rinse it all off. Man, oh man, that sure looks good. That cleaner really did a fabulous job on that. Wow, just like brand new. When you start putting this carburetor back together again, the first thing that I would suggest doing is getting the throttle shaft and the throttle plates properly secured. And one of the things that you have to pay attention to is how you put these throttle plates back in. So if you're not having good results and it doesn't want to close, take the throttle plate out and flip it around. This is how it should look. Actually what we're looking at is the underside of the carburetor. So when you put these bolts back in, that's what you should see from the underside. And this is how it should look in the fully closed position. Tighten all four to make sure that the throttle shaft is in the proper position and that it moves freely like this. Then you take one of the bolts out and apply the Loctite to it. Put it back in, tighten it down, then go to the opposite side. Take one of the bolts out, repeat the process, and then do the remaining two bolts. And now at this point, you'll be ready to install the bearings. And the bearings just need to go in very easily, a tap on this side and a tap on this side. And that's where they will fit, and you will have just a phenomenal seal all the way around on this carburetor. All right, rock solid. Here's how you know for sure if the pump valve is cleaned out properly. In the upright position, you should be able to see through the viewing hole here, you should be able to see daylight. Turn it upside down and you look through the viewing hole again, the check balls should be in the down position and you should not be able to see any light coming through one of those two holes. And if it's still clogged up, you'll need the spray carburetor cleaner in here through the two viewing holes, and that ought to do it. If it doesn't, then it might mean you need to do an overnight soaking. I have new crush washers. I put that one over the top. This way, and guess what? The crush washer does. Oh, there we go. All right. I was worried. All right. So crush washer. Then pump jet. And then the next crush washer. And into the carburetor. Make sure that the pump jet is secure, seated in the carburetor body. And screw that pump jet in. We'll tighten all that later. This is the pump diaphragm, and when you insert it, the outside fits like that. And there is a spring that fits in there. Spring goes in first, then the pump diaphragm, and then the cover. And this is spring loaded. Then we'll go to a larger screwdriver and give it a good final tightening. Go crisscross. Our English oil-resistant gasket fits like this. Nice and easy. Have to finesse it. Make sure that these guys are not getting hung up. And then with our properly measured float. Nice and easy. Snug it up. And then we have 4 bolts. One, 2, 3, 4. And you're done. That's it. Then it's just a question of setting it aside. And start on the next carburetor. That's all there is to it. Easy.